In case you haven't heard, Representative Joe Kennedy III is challenging Green New Deal author Senator Ed Markey, one of like the 5 progressives that we have in the Senate. I mean, he had a controversial pro-Iraq war vote in the past. He's regretted it. But ever since then, you know, he's one of the, again, 5 most progressive senators in the Senate. And this primary challenge is dangerous. Kennedy has outraised Markey, and he is running a primary challenge from the right, but he's just younger and has a famous name, so people are jumping on board. The Democratic establishment said that they hated primary challenges, even went so far as to try to blacklist campaign consultants from working with any primary challengers until Pramila Jayapal, Mark Pocan of the Progressive Caucus kind of got them to back away from that, luckily. But they suddenly love Joe Kennedy's primary challenge because, again, he is primarying Markey from the right with an ego-driven, substanceless run meant to kneecap one of the only progressives that we have in the Senate. So Kyrsten Sinema, proud centrist senator, even though she's a Democrat, is hosting a fundraiser for Kennedy. And now House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, alongside Jamie Raskin, who has fought against corruption for a large part of his career, and I'm extremely disappointed in him. They're also hosting a fundraiser for Joe Kennedy. Unsurprisingly, Steny Hoyer has received millions from oil and gas PACs, and Markey has been at the forefront of the climate change fight again. He was the author in the Senate, alongside AOC in the House, of the Green New Deal. So, by the way, Steny Hoyer is so pro-oil and gas that he fought, thankfully unsuccessfully, for fossil fuel bailouts in the HEROES Act that just passed on May 15th. So, again, one of the top Democrats, most powerful Democrats in the country. That's awesome. Markey is 73 years old. He has served in Congress for decades, first as a member of the House, now in the Senate, and again, one of the only progressives we've got in that chamber. Joe Kennedy has raised millions from fossil fuel companies. He is one of the wealthiest members of Congress, I think in the top 30, obviously has an extremely famous family name and lineage, and personally, allegedly, has fossil fuel stocks himself. He is vitriolically anti-marijuana, even though his state has actually legalized it. He voted against decriminalization and was opposed to medical marijuana back in 2015, which is crazy. So backwards thinking, and I think that gives you a snapshot of him. Kennedy also just doesn't do anything. In the current session, Markey has sponsored 80 bills and 22 amendments. Kennedy has sponsored 11 and 3, respectively. This is from a Nation article that was a little while back. And Markey's legislation is substantive and more progressive. He is the lead sponsor of the Save the Internet Act, the Restricting First Use of Nuclear Weapons Act, the Label Opioids Act, the host of environmental initiatives, including Stop Giving Big Oil Free Money Act and Ban Oil Exports Act, and the Offshore Wind Jobs and Opportunity Act. Kennedy's legislation, according to the Nation's characterization, is what you might call pragmatic. He signed on as a co-sponsor of the House versions of some of Markey's proposed legislation. He introduced the Medicaid Bump Act, which seeks to raise the Medicaid fund matching rate for mental and behavioral services, again, kind of this technocratic tweaking around the edges, and the Worker Dividend Act, which creates the expectation that companies with over $250 million in yearly earnings will pay their employees a dividend or tax should they decline. Again, small tweaky changes. Markey wants huge substantive changes like the Green New Deal. Joe Kennedy wants more power and recognition. I've never seen such a clear-cut disconnect between these two Democrats, two high-profile Democrats running in the same race, you know, besides Bernie and Biden, but when it comes to the Senate level. The primary is coming up. As I mentioned, Kennedy is outraising Markey at this point. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors if they live in Massachusetts. There's a real establishment streak in Massachusetts, although of like the wealthier coastal states, they do produce more progressive senators than, say, New York or, say, New Jersey, in my view. I think Elizabeth Warren is more progressive than Kirsten Gillibrand, for example, or Cory Booker. It's not that much, as we've learned, maybe recently, but a little bit. But they also are, like those kind of wealthier states, they have a soft spot for moderate Republicans. Massachusetts recently had a Republican governor. I don't know if you guys know him. His name's Mitt Romney. Became more conservative when he was on the national scene. But what I'm trying to say is that this Senate seat isn't a gimme. The Democrats could lose it in the fall. And I don't know if Kennedy is the right person to hold on to that Senate seat. So even from a power-holding perspective, which I know that's all that Democratic leadership cares about, do you trust this guy who says nothing at all, this smiling face, to hold on to the Senate for you? Because the whole point of why they didn't like primary challenges was because they said, we need everything to be blue. We need the House to be blue. We need the Senate to be blue. Does this threaten your power? Because I think it does. But they don't really care, because then it would kneecap Markey, and he is a progressive, which they hate. So support Ed Markey. That's all I gotta say.